Hey guys, what is up? Ncaa 31 here. We haven't seen much NCAA 14 in quite some time. Um, well, that's why we're talking about the conclusion of the college football season. This seems appropriate enough. This is my Notre Dame dynasty here. The problem with NCAA 14, I'm going to do a reboot, obviously, because I don't want to have all on 99s. I'm going to use a lesser tier team. I'll still keep this one around for my own personal enjoyment. I think for upload purposes, um, do a little something else. Because the problem is, if you use a power team in NCAA 14, players don't leave early or transfer at the rate they do in real life. So what ends up happening after 3 seasons, you have just a super team, and it's impossible to lose. I mean, I still have Deshaun Kaiser, I still have Josh Adams, I still have the entire offensive line. It's insane.
Right next to the Ohio River.
But anywho, I'm going to recap not only the national championship game, I'll touch on my Notre Dame Fighting Irish a little bit, and also my thoughts about bowl season this year in general. I thought it was really disappointing as a whole. I thought bowl season this year as a whole stunk. Stunk. Very few compelling games. You had some matchups that looked okay on paper or looked intriguing in paper turn into complete and utter garbage. And in general, you just had a lot of bad games. I think a couple of things are at play here. One, the college football playoff, there's more than one side effect I think of this, but I think that one of the side effects of the college football playoff is that it really hurts the other bowl games as far as participation is concerned. You know, players aren't playing in these games. You had Michigan sitting all their players out of that game. Not that I think it would have mattered. I think Jim Harbaugh is at a crossroads. He can either change how he operates and modernize a little bit, or he can go the way of Les Miles. One of the two. But they got absolutely killed. LSU had all those players out. They still beat UCF. Granted, UCF was without Mackenzie Milton, which really hurt them. I mean, you saw a glimpse of life after Mackenzie if you're a UCF fan. Even more so than that, even though LSU had those players out, more so on the defensive backfield than anywhere else. And I'll touch on this in a little bit, but you saw the difference between what these powerhouse teams have on the lines, offensive and defensive lines. They just dominated UCF along both sides of the line of scrimmage. That was the most deceiving one-score game I've seen in quite some time. Never at any point in that game, no, that's a lie. I thought LSU might get boat raced out of there at the beginning because Burrow, through that pick six, got lit up, and LSU looked a little bit shaky. I thought UCF was going to have a chance to boat race them out of there, but LSU stabilized the game, and you just saw the waves of defensive linemen just dominating UCF on the line of scrimmage. And you saw that LSU was basically able to grind out yards wherever they felt like it, with a parade of backs. They had some really good-looking receivers. LSU makes me sick, man. I don't know how LSU fans don't go insane. You know, LSU, Georgia, Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, they're all the same program. I've said this over and over again. They're the same program in the sense that they get the same caliber of athlete. They get the cream of the crop of the high school recruiting class every year, and you really see it along the defensive lines, on the offensive line, and in team speed. Georgia did lay an egg against Texas, which, you know, a large part about these bowl games, too, is who really wants to be there. And I'm not going to say that Georgia didn't try, but really, their season was decided a month prior, or 3 or 4 weeks prior. But once that SEC championship game went the way it did, it really, I think, took a lot of wind out of their sails. It's just human nature. It's so hard when you have, the purpose of your season sitting there right in front of you. You're so close to grasping it, and you lose it the way they did, and then have to play a secondary bowl game, a quote-unquote secondary bowl game. That's tough. That's tough to get up to that. It really is. But on the flip side, I love what Texas did. I'm so happy with them. I'm really happy that they're improving. I think life is better when programs like Texas are good. I think it makes things fun. I think college football in general is healthy when the blue bloods are healthy. Period. They're the ones that drive the sport. Your occasional upstart and special season by an underdog is fine and all that good stuff, but I think the traditional power programs, they're the ones that drive the bus. And it's always fun to have a program like Texas with a swanky fight song, good fan base, great tradition, doing good things. It always makes me happy. But yeah, a lot of these bowl games flat out suck. I mean, look at these scores. The national semifinals were both blowout games. I mean, my Fighting Irish went down 30-3. I'll get to that in a little bit. And, Alabama, Oklahoma, 11-point game, but the game wasn't, as close as that score either. 45-34. Florida trounced Michigan 41-15. And you just have stuff like that all over the place. A&M over NC State, 52-13. What else here? Virginia shutting out South Carolina, 28-0. What an awful game that was. That's just a shame. The receiver did his job. Auburn put 63 on Purdue. Syracuse, West Virginia, 34-18. The Alamo Bowl is a good game. The Alamo Bowl usually has a good matchup. 28-26, Washington State over Iowa State. I watched that game. Good game. Mike Leach gets a bowl W and an 11-2 season. Good season for Wazoo. Baylor won a bowl game. They won their bowl game 45-38. Wisconsin just destroys Miami 35-3. Canes had no interest in that game. Duke 56-27. TCU, California 10-7 in an awful game. Awful game. The Rose Bowl was a good game. It was looking bleak for most of it. It turned out to be a good game. It was 28-3 for most of it, and then Washington reels off 20 points in the fourth quarter, and it ends up being a 28-23 game, which was nuts. And how about Kentucky with a 10-3 season, winning the Citrus Bowl 27-24, and Iowa beating Mississippi State 27-22. So you had some good games sprinkled in here and there, but you also had just a lot of dead wood. I mean, terrible. A lot of bad, unwatchable games. More so than in any year that I can remember on the top of my head. Just not good. Not good. Now, as far as a natty goes, what can you say? I mean, hats off to Clemson, man. I mean, didn't see that margin of victory in either direction happening. I mean, Alabama and Clemson, like I said, they're as close to each other as you can get as far as caliber of athlete. But they just straight took it to them. Straight took it to them. Out Alabama to Alabama in, a lot of ways, which was ironic to see. And you saw Tua look tight, I think. Tua looked shaky. He had the shaky pick six on, ironically enough, a classic Saban cut coverage concept. And he threw another INT where he just threw the ball up for grabs. And he just did not play a very sound, confident game. He looked uneasy the entire game. But that'll happen when you got a Clemson team that has 3 or 4 guys that are going to be picked on the first day of the NFL draft, and their best one didn't even play. Again, that's the difference between these teams. You can't block them. You can't block them. And on the other side, you have Trevor Lawrence, who's one of these savants. Kid is a damn protege. I mean, my lord, 19 years old, playing like that, making throws like that. He made some throws that I could not believe. A kid, 19 true freshmen was making. He made one throw in particular that just made my jaw drop. Where he threw on a smash concept, he threw the corner route against cover 2 from the opposite hash. And if you saw how far that ball had to travel, I mean, it's just amazing. It was easy for him. It's just scary how good that kid is. You know, Clemson, Bama, Ohio State, Georgia, they have these QB savants, and it just pisses me off. So I gotta watch, you know, Ian Book scrap his tail off to just get a throwdown field off. I mean, my God, I want one. Why can't I have a guy like that, please? I mean, it's crazy. You got a guy like Travis Etienne who's like a Jeff Demps with power, which is nuts. And all the receivers are like 6'3", and can run like gazelle and jump. You got Justin Ross out there, true freshman, built like Julio Jones. T. Higgins out there, he's 6'4", averaging 20 yards per catch himself. I mean, it's insane. Just go up and down the depth chart. Who else? Amari Rogers, quick little slot guy, and Hunter Renfrow, who catches everything underneath and always gets open on third down. I mean, it's just insane. And on the other side, you have Bama, whose third back is the best out of all the backs that they have, and in my opinion, doesn't get the ball nearly enough. And you have Jerry Jeudy out there looking like a Percy Harvin clone. But really, also, outside of the talent, Clemson just, I think, out-schemed and out-coached them. And I don't recall the last time I've seen this where Alabama just has coverage bust after coverage bust after coverage bust. I mean, when we've seen Alabama lose, we've seen them lose a dynamic quarterback before. That's the way you got to beat them. You know, Alabama will eat your typical ham and egg college quarterback. You know, they'll chew him up and spit him out. They'll just, you know, constrict him and make his life hell all game long. Alabama forces you to make NFL throws. And the way you beat them is you have a quarterback that can make NFL throws. You know, guys like Johnny Manziel, who pull it out of his hat time and time again when they beat them. And of course, Deshaun Watson. You got to have a real special dynamic quarterback who's going to be playing on Sundays, period. But what you aren't used to seeing them make mental mistakes and blow assignments. Clemson did a wonderful job, and someone, you know, tweeted this out during the game, and I agree that they were doing a great job of coming out in formations that, you know, test their checks. A lot of stack and double stack sets, trips, motion to trips, a lot of formations that force Alabama to have to communicate, get their checks right, and cause just a flicker of hesitation. And in football, all you need is to be a half a step slow because you're thinking too much and you don't get there. You're beat, you're getting blocked, you're not making the play. And that's what happened over and over and over again. There was one play that they had which was pretty much symbolic of the whole ordeal, where they had a coverage bust where one guy thought he was in zone and the rest of the defense was playing man. Missed the check. Thought he was in one defense when everyone else was in another. Someone's wide open. Guys falling down, and then a guy catches the ball. Someone takes a poor angle, misses a tackle, takes it to the house. I mean, those are the type of things that you're just not used to seeing out of an Alabama team, but they did an excellent job of putting them into bad positions. That's why these coaches make the big bucks, to come up with game plans like that. They did a really spectacular job in that regard. Really good job. And of course, we had the ill-fated fake field goal attempt, which was basically a white flag moment. That was pretty much a concession of, okay, we can't beat you. You're better. We gotta try to trick you. You know, that's how that went down. That was basically your white flag moment of the game, and the game was pretty much, you know, over and done with by that point, or at that point. There's no coming back from that. And whatever they're paying Brent Venables, it's worth every penny. Great game plan. That guy is really, really good at what he does, and he's comfortable doing what he does. Has no desire to be a head coach anywhere, knows where his bread is buttered, he's getting paid a fortune, and he gets to coach all these great athletes. You know, he's your new Bud Foster. He'll be a top DC for decades, and just create game plans that wreak havoc with the QB every single week. When you combine a guy who knows what he's doing with elite talent, it's really, really scary. Really scary. And honestly, it's good for Alabama to take one on the chin for once. They've been so dang successful for so long now, and their fans take it well. I'll give their fans that. They take it well. They don't act like spoiled little brats. You're gonna lose one every now and then, and you've won so many times that you can't really, gripe about it. But I'm curious to see how Alabama will respond to this. You know they're going to be in the mix again next year, but I think it'll be interesting to see how they go through a season with a little bit of a chip on their shoulder. Gotta believe that'll stoke some fire in them. No one likes getting embarrassed like that and beat like that on a national stage. And I'm curious to see about Tua. We saw some holes in Tua's game, I think. We saw him rattled under pressure. We saw him make some mistakes and force some throws. Again, we never saw him under that kind of adversity. So I'm curious to see how he bounces back from that. I think he'll be fine, but I want to see it. I think that'll be fun to see next year. Let's see how they respond when they've had their pride bruised a little bit. So, there you go. If you look at the final poll, we're just going to do the top 5. You have Clemson, of course, obviously, Alabama, Ohio State, Oklahoma, and my Fighting Irish, which I think is, about right. You have 6 through 10 being LSU, Florida, Georgia, Texas, and Washington State. Hard to quibble with any of that. Now, let me conclude with my Fighting Irish. No, Notre Dame does not need to join the conference. And no, Notre Dame will not be shut out of the playoffs if they go undefeated again next year. Look at your schedule next season. They play at Georgia, at Michigan, at Stanford. And outside of those games, you had your typical solid Notre Dame schedule. Since Notre Dame does not play in a conference, if they go undefeated playing the kind of schedule they play year in, year out, you might have your soft one here and there, but almost always Notre Dame has a really good schedule. And as a result, they're going to be in the mix if they run the table, but they can't afford to have a loss because they don't have that extra game to make amends if they stub their toe along the way. That's the one downside. Other than that, they're never giving up that TV deal. No one has anything close to as cushy as that. They're not going to share a dime of that with nobody. And really, I don't think that they're that far away. They just have to get over that hump. It wasn't too long ago that Clemsoning was a thing, where they used to crap the bed in every big game they ever played. I happen to like Brian Kelly. I know he's still a polarizing figure. Some people love him, some people hate him. Very few people are, lukewarm about him. I happen to be a Brian Kelly advocate. I think he's done a wonderful job of recruiting at Notre Dame. Where Notre Dame annoys people is this. Where Notre Dame annoys people is when they lose, they want you to think that they're recruiting at the level of Northwestern with their pristine academic standards. That's where Notre Dame ticks people off. Nonsense. Notre Dame can recruit. They've been recruiting really good along the offensive and defensive lines, along the back end and their secondary. They're fast and athletic on the second level now. And really, for most of that first half against Clemson, the defense did all you could expect a defense to do. They couldn't do anymore. That game turned off of one bust on the seam route and one tactical error where they had a backup corner in position to get beat by a fade route by one of those stud receivers. And that's where that game turned, and there was no recovering from it because, again, they couldn't block them. My fear in that game was that they couldn't block Clemson, and that came to pass. You give me Quentin Nelson and McGlinchey on that line, maybe that turns out different. But, they're in the NFL now. That happens. And the line was still pretty good this year, but it wasn't that good. And they just could not handle them up front. And when you compound that with the fact that the receivers got no separation, if I watched the All-22, I'd bet Clemson played man coverage on 70 to 75% of their snaps, bare minimum. You can't have an offense of all position receivers. Imagine if Clemson's offense had all Hunter Renfrows. Hunter Renfro's a good player, but he works because you have guys that can run by you, stretching the field, and he can work underneath. Miles Boykin, good receiver, jump ball, possession guy. Chase Claypool, possession guy. Finke, possession guy. They haven't had anyone who can run by someone since Will Fuller. They desperately need that. I think Ian Book is okay. I think he's a good college quarterback. I don't think he's a guy who can win a game by himself. As a matter of fact, it would not surprise me if he's not a sure thing to start next season. You know, BK is like that with his quarterbacks. He likes to hold their feet to the fire, make them feel uncomfortable and competing for their livelihood. It's just the way he rolls. So it wouldn't shock me if the kid, Jurkevic, isn't in the mix and doesn't get a shot. Highly touted recruit. Didn't play that much this year, obviously. But wouldn't surprise me if Book has to fend him off. Wouldn't surprise me at all. But they desperately need speed on the outside. That's one thing they lacked, and it was really, really apparent when they went against a team that had tons of stud athletes on the second level and in the secondary. So there you go. Another college football season is in the books. Can't wait for the next one. And I'd love to hear what you guys think. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Talk to you all later. Peace.
For Dirt Curve Street, this is Brad Nessler saying goodbye.